join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Greg Oram, and with me it's my podcast partner, Richard Spray. Coming up later, we will be focusing on Sunday's Premier League trip to Brighton, and that's another tough away test and a game that could carry real weight as Forest look to pick up valuable points on the road. But first, Nottingham Forest are into the Europa League last 16, but anyone who was at the City Ground or watching on the telly last night knows that this tie had every Forest fan uttering forbidden words such as Yeovil and Stoke as the match unfolded. 3-0 up from the first leg, Pereira made a host of personnel changes that saw several fringe players fail to make any impact at all, and Forest suddenly found themselves under real pressure as Fenerbahçe scored twice and flipped the feel of the game completely. So today it is just myself and Richard breaking down what actually happened last night, where and how Forest lost control, how they eventually managed the danger, and what that tells us about this side when things start to wobble in Europe. Momentum did eventually swing as the first choice cavalry arrived, and it took us a crucial first Europa League goal from Super Callum Hudson-Odoi to make sure that Forest got over the line to win the tie 4-2 on aggregates.
Taking on a trip I'd like to go someday. Leverkusen, Copenhagen, and Marseille.
Kind of well forward. He's seen plenty of the ball since coming on. Hudson-Odoi. It's in Hudson-Odoi! That's a huge goal tonight for Nottingham Forest, and look at Vitor Pereira's celebration. The coolest man in the place, Callum Hudson-Odoi. Super Callum Hudson-Odoi.
He was the one that we made the song about for the Super Thursday nights in Callum Hudson-Odoi, and he finally arrived and really was the difference last night in making sure all the nerves were settled down. The draw for the round of 16 is now happening. So we'll try and interject and keep you updated. It's either going to be Midtjylland or Betis, teams that we've faced previously. I was talking to Richard before we came on air, and we both agreed that the devil in us wants Midtjylland really to try and wrong the rights of that horrendous night. And, of course, I was there for Midtjylland, and I was there last night. I've only had 2 European games under my belt. I've lost them both, tepid performances. I think I'm going to stay at home now, Richard, and let the other fans go live. Maybe I'm the bad luck charm. I really think maybe that could be a thing. We're going to get into talking about the action last night, but I want to just quickly pause. And, look, sad news, guys. We have to pay tribute to our good friend Adam Wicklow over at Red Side of the Trent, because the sad news was announced by him that his wife Emma has sadly passed. We know that she had an ongoing battle with cancer, and sadly she did succumb and passed away. All we can say is that we're sending love and strength and support to Adam, to Emma's family and friends, and our condolences and thoughts are with you all. And may she rest in peace. Alrighty, let's talk about the game. I think that's what Adam and Emma would probably want us to do. That's what we're here for. So, hey, Richard, listen, last night was not great. What are your first thoughts on the Fenerbahçe Forest match last night and the lineup? I mean, how much of that first half wobble was the rotation backfiring? Pereira, as we know, rotated and put 6 different players in. Did that disrupt the structure or expose how thin the level is outside the first 11?
Yeah, I think if you ask the manager, I think Vitor Pereira actually said it after the match too. I mean, he put it all on himself for obviously choosing that lineup and going with that setup. But I think the weird thing for me wasn't so much. I mean, yeah, to a degree, it was a little bit different than I think what we expected, right, Greg, in terms of what personnel we thought would be there. There was I think 5 changes in total from the normal starting 11, and what's that? I'm sorry.
Six.
Was it 6? Oh, okay. I thought it was 5 for some reason in my head. I counted 5. But anyway, it's more than I anticipated. But I think it's also just the way he deployed them in terms of where he had them actually situated, which, I'm sure we'll talk about it. Questionable as to whether we should ever see, Murillo in a left back position, even though you and I had been touting that as being an option and something that we thought would be effective just because of his skill set. But clearly that didn't work. Playing Dominguez in a kind of a 10 role was a bit strange. I just didn't see, how he established that. And even not even including Odoi potentially as well, just to give Hutchinson some rest. And he put him on the side that he's still a very effective player. And he showed some of that at the beginning of the first half. But ultimately, I just felt like it wasn't there. There just wasn't synergy, that the spacing and understanding of where each other was going to be in order to create something from open play just wasn't there. Yeah, it just seemed like everybody was a fraction off. Even players that we know are nailed on, and historically, like an Anderson, for example, or even Nico, were going to be that consistent force, that ability to kind of generate things, because they were the ones that typically had been on the pitch and had shown plenty of effectiveness. So yeah, it was a bit strange, and just everything was just, there's just the composure wasn't there. Everything was just really frenetic at certain intervals. They weren't taking their time to find the right ball. They were just, passing it directly to the opposing players. They were getting players like Anderson not doing well, getting dispossessed. I mean, it was just a weird chemistry of just poor performances across the board.
We were in the nav. That's myself, and Raf was there, and Paul Morley, Danscape, Steve Battermuch arrived, and we were talking beforehand about how many changes he might make, because we just didn't really know. Raf went for none. He actually said, "You know what? I think it's going to go unchanged." and the other guy said 2 or 3. I mean, I said 5, thinking, "I'll go 5." It was 6, and actually, as soon as the team came out, we were trying to work out where Murillo was playing, where Cunha was playing. We didn't know, because look, any of those could have played left back. Morato could have gone left back. It was Murillo. And Pat Brett's in the comments saying, can someone finally understand that Murillo can't play left back? Well, it's been an experiment, and maybe that experiment should be shelved now. McAtee pushed out to the right when you kind of want to see him in the 10. Lorenzo Luca up front, which I was kind of happy for him to start, because we've got to utilize the squad. We're going to talk more about him a bit later on. You can be sure of that. Let me quickly say hello to Steph's with us. She says, watching you is more exciting than the actual live draw. Thanks. We
appreciate
that. Matt Wooten says, you can't make 6 changes and play players out of their normal positions and expect the same output from the team. A couple of changes and tweaks, and we would have been easier on the eye. And I think that's true. I think that is true. We were talking about that aspect as well, Matt and Richard, before as well, about too many changes can upset the apple cart. And I looked at the Malmo team selection and also the Ferencvaros one, and there still were a healthy number of changes in those teams in terms of squad depth. And it's almost a question of you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because Pereira's got to balance up the Brighton match on Sunday. I mean, Anderson got a full 90 last night, which I don't think anybody wanted and saw coming. So that's something to consider as well. No Milenkovic. And then there were players hauled off at half-time. We'll get to that shortly. The draw is looking like they're trying to warm it up and get going. So I'll interject when things happen. But the match got underway, Richard. I mean, it was really good to be there in person. I thought the Fenerbahçe fans were making an awful lot of noise, and that was great to see. But it was delayed with those flares and objects being thrown on. And I want to ask you, do you think that incident helped Fenerbahçe by cranking up the chaos? Or should Forest at home really be able to settle down and not let it bother them and let it, get into their stride quicker?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? That's not the kind of cutting edge you would hear Deitch talk about all the time when we were lacking cutting edge. They definitely won. I use this phrasing frequently in relation to Ryan Yates in terms of how he operates in the middle, but that psychological warfare, I think everything was just off kilter from that point going forward. Although we seemed up for it to be the first 6-7 minutes of the match. It seemed like we were going to take control, even with so many changes and such a different approach in terms of where you're bigger position players, like we mentioned. But yeah, it definitely felt like that was part of it. I think that, Yatesy having the dislocated finger as well, which, what a warrior, man. That guy showed zero pain in that moment. He just got up and goes, yeah, that's a problem. It's like, I don't think that's how I would react to a dislocated finger. I probably wouldn't be rolling around the ground, throwing a tantrum by any stretch, but I wouldn't be quite as manly as Yates was in that moment. But yeah, it just felt like everything was off balance from the moment that began, at least through to the point where Yatesy's dislocated finger happened, and then from that point forward, it was it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit of a dumpster fire, unfortunately.
I thought the warning signs were kind of creeping in a little bit. We did kind of settle after the flares were cleared and were looking to take control, but there was some wayward passes. Murillo was guilty again. There were some loose interchanges. And, I don't think Fenerbahçe looked particularly dangerous. But, of course, at 22nd minute, they go 1-0 up. Catching is on the counter. And it was one of those moments where he really should have been put out as source. Yates and Morato kind of getting each other's way almost and colliding. And then the guy gets played through. And it looked like, I was sat in the Trent end with Paul Morley. And it looked like a bit of a comedy of errors. And Nico was slipping. And all of a sudden, within 20 odd minutes, we were 1-0 down, and we talked about what that might do to a team with loads of changes. Was it build up midfield spacing for you, the way that Forest were dealing with early pressure? What was it for you that kind of you can put your finger on as to why they conceded that goal and what kind of impact it had for the next sort of 10, 15 minutes after?
Well, it feels like we've seen some version of that previously. I think the most famous, example from last season was when I think it was Everton, where we played them, and similar situation, right? Granted, that was where he was on the ball and he kind of tried to do a little bit too much with it and then got dispossessed, and then they obviously were off and running at that stage. But we've seen iterations of that previously. Granted, that was under Nuno, as a different sort of framework, but I think that's the danger you run in when you've got your wing backs playing higher. Is there's more of an opportunity for them to play behind, and Morato, as we know, is notorious for some sort of mental lapse at some point within the course of the match. Colliding with Yates may have not been something that was totally on his fault, but I appreciated the fact that Nico at least tracked back as he did. On any other given day, it just felt like there was sort of like a full moon sort of effect with this match. It was like there was at any other point, in another match, he takes that ball here, he gets in front of that ball, he intercepts it, and he maybe puts it back for a corner or something to that effect. So it just felt like we're a bit snake bitten from the off. And so Cunha, obviously being a young player and trying to understand like what do I do? I thought he looked like he was in two minds. He was like, do I engage? Do I sit back and try to get in front of the player that he clearly saw was advancing? So it was a difficult situation for him. I don't totally put it on him by any stretch. So yeah, unfortunate outcome. Unfortunate that Morato couldn't have done better in that moment, because I think he did engage the player that ended up, I think, turning and making that run. He just didn't time it right. So, but that's stuff like that's going to happen to the best center backs in the world at certain points. But it just feels like, unfortunately, with him, it's a little bit more of a frequency.
I listened to Vitor Pereira's post-match interview, and he said, "Look, it was my decision to make the changes. I've got to balance up the squad rotation and the tiredness factor, and you do get a disjointed output, as Matt was saying in the comments, when you make those changes." And it felt like there was decision making, there was specific players that weren't up to the level we need them to be up. So we're going to get into four players in a minute. And talk about them, because they were the four players that I saw in the first half and thought they should go off. And they are the four players that went off. Before we do that, I want to just quickly grab your quick thoughts on anything. What was the positives you were seeing? I want to chip in and say that Hutch was trying.
Yeah,
he was really operating quite well. There was an errant pass or two, but I was quite happy with Hutch to a certain degree. Dominguez was doing what he does, but there was. What was it for you that stood out that was, okay, it wasn't as bad as what everyone was saying out, like it was the worst thing possible? The draw is now underway as well. So the first name out of the hat is Freiburg. So they've been drawn out. We know we're not playing them. Go on, Rich.
And maybe this is not going to track with some folks, but and the other player that I want to call out, I think might. The first one is I didn't think McAtee was that bad, and I thought it was a bit strange that he got pulled because he was taking players on. I think he showed confidence. He showed that desire to try to make something happen when he could see that the overall rhythm of things for Forest was just not there. Was he like dominating? Was he really creating a ton? No, but I mean, he was taking players on and cutting in and trying to do something that at least unlocked them to a degree, and it just wasn't fantastic. But I didn't think it deserved him being pulled. Now I don't know if there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that when we get to our starting lineups. But it just felt like that was a bit odd for my liking, and I didn't think he was, of all the players on the pitch, I didn't think he was the one that wasn't showing enough to be able to warrant being removed at halftime. But the other player that I thought actually was pretty decent, considering he's not been getting a lot of minutes, is actually Jair Cunha. I still have an immense belief that he has every skill set, talent, etc. He has a high ceiling, enough of a high ceiling that I think he should be utilized more frequently. You have said it, others have said it. With what we've seen Murado in terms of the liability he can become at certain points, he's great in that last 10 minutes of a match, right? If you just wanted to see a match out and you put him in a back three, but ultimately when you put him in a situation like where he's starting for an entire match, it doesn't seem to be. You're not bearing fruit from that. You're just creating more difficulties and potentially putting yourself at risk. So I would think at this stage, you got to elevate Jair Cunha over him. I mean, he hasn't had a ton of opportunity in the Premier League, but maybe that's going to change. Maybe it's something about with the way that he played in this match. I know about the penalty, and we'll probably speak on that. But I think as a general whole, I thought he looked really good. And he has a similar style to him in terms of his movement and stuff like that I see from Milinkovic. A lot of people think he's a Murillo replacement, but I think he's actually more akin to. Oh, did you need to jump in, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching. Sorry, I'm watching it on YouTube on my phone, and it looks like, But I mean, Panathinaikos got Real Betis, so that means that we've got Midtjylland. Steph said it in the comments. We've got Midtjylland, so we got what we wanted. So that's the headline that we were waiting.
There you go.
We've got Midtjylland. Sorry, I just wanted to kind of interject there. No, I mean,
that's great.
I mean, look. I was watching the game and I thought McAtee wasn't great, if I'm honest with you. I thought he started fine. I thought he had, but as the game went on in the first half, it just felt like something happened. His confidence got knocked. The header he tried was just terrible. There
was that. That's true.
It just wasn't working. And I think, in fairness to him being put out onto the right wing, it's not the right thing to do. He was so good against Ferencváros. He was really stood out against Ferencváros. He played more centrally. And I just think that it was a mistake to put him out there as well. And I don't want to hang him out to dry, because there's me beforehand saying, you know what, next 2 or 3 months, I think that Vitor Pereira is going to unlock something from McAtee that's going to help us, and he's going to be able to make a bit of a difference for us. And I still think that could happen, but he's got to be used right in my eyes. And it is tough and it is rough when you come into a team and there are lots of changes being made. And we were talking about maybe the wingers would change with Odoi and Bakwa being selected beforehand. That didn't happen. But what we were discussing, and Raf was pointing this out as well, look, if you're going to play Odoi and Bakwa, then at least play Gibbs White with them so that they've got the regular 10 that's kind of feeding them a little bit. And there's logic in that, definitely. But yeah, we saw what happened last night with team selection. And when you go 1-0 down, all of a sudden you do, as I said in the intro, start to think about those moments in our history where it just unravels and you end up losing a tie that you should never be losing. So let's talk about those players. I want to talk about Ryan Yates first. Club captain, warrior, finger dislocated. It just didn't get going last night for me, Richard, and I was disappointed with him, and I thought it was the right decision to take him off at halftime. I thought he had a rough night. What's your view on Yates?
No, it's true. I mean, you reminisce on performances like he had last season at Anfield, where he played the bulk of the minutes and he looked really good. I mean, he basically effectively neutralized McAllister in that match. So you see that there's that ability in him. Is it going to be consistently great every match in and match out? No, because he provides you other things. I mean, leadership at the top of that list. But yeah, it was weird. It's like he didn't want to he didn't want to advance up the pitch. I think he's been doing more of this season. He didn't want to seemingly make runs and try to create opportunities for others, because the creation aspect was lacking, which is again why you don't want McAtee out on the right. You want him in the middle. You want him being the distributor. To your point, though, obviously, if you're going to play different wingers, you might not see that as a value, but he felt like he just sort of sat back when he got the ball. He just recycled it back. It was the old Ryan Yates of side to side, back, side to side, back. It was nothing really. He wasn't really doing anything to enhance the situation and make it possible for us to progress towards that final third into the box. It was just, I mean, other than Hutch, there really wasn't a whole lot of people. I mean, yet, as you pointed out, to a degree, McAtee at the beginning, but everyone just seemed a little bit off, just by a certain percentage. But he definitely was in that camp, and so it was a good thing, obviously, with the injury that he came off, because it was probably just tracking towards where he just wasn't going to affect the match in any way, shape, or form. I mean, like I said, the way that he functions, and he can kind of be that coach on the field, as it were. That's certainly important, but from what he was actually doing with the ball at his feet, it wasn't really doing anything to help us advance the cause.
Yeah, and again, he's not had an awful lot of game time, as we talk about. So he's a different type of midfielder to your Sankara and Dominguez. Anderson starts, and that for me, again, he's one player that we need to kind of protect, but he's just full of running all the time, and he was good last night again. Or without being spectacular. I mean, there were moments where, I was frustrated with him as well. He had that shot after we went 1-0 down, I think it was, that just glanced wide. Hutch was still trying to make things happen. And one thing that was evident, there was frustration from the City Ground crowd, and they wanted the ball going into the box. And there was an occasion when Hutch had the ball and the crowd were kind of like breathing on him. Do you know what I mean? They were kind of like huffing and puffing, and I could sense that he could read that, and so therefore he crossed the ball when he probably shouldn't have done. In fact, he shouldn't have done. He was felt pressure to do it, so that pressure does transmit onto the players, because they're being hurried and hassled, and actually it doesn't help when what's going on in the pitch goes into the crowd, and then what goes into the crowd goes onto the pitch. So it's a two-way thing, and then there was this tension that was rolling around the City Ground, because you're 1-0 down and you think, my God, something's got to give. And you look at the players on the pitch, and there's Murillo at left back that I don't really think, as we touched on, is something we should be doing going forwards. You and I had spoken about it. I'd kind of flagged it up. Maybe he could be at left back. He doesn't think like a left back. That's the problem. His positioning, and therefore the way he plays, just doesn't suit the position. He doesn't go forwards that much, actually, down the flank. He was kind of cutting into a midfield area. His passing this season, on the whole, hasn't been good. He's given away the ball more times than I can ever remember, with trying passes out that go straight to the feet of the opposition. He's got to cut that out. And that's the thing that's stopping him from being world-class. He is a fantastic player, but Murillo is not world-class. World-class players don't do that. They don't do that at all. They protect the ball. They don't put the ball at unnecessary risk. And we saw it against Everton last year when he got robbed, and we're seeing it this season. He's playing the ball and passing the ball, mispassing the ball too many times for him to be classed as world-class. He is an elite level player. Don't get me wrong. This is not me rubbing down on Murillo. I love him. He's brilliant. We've seen how good he can be, but he's got to cut that out of his game. And Murillo at left back, for me, is an experiment that should be shelved. Again, we've talked about, why was Luca Netz not in this squad? Be a perfect game for him last night. We've touched on McAtee. You kind of liked what you were seeing to a certain degree. Me, less so. Murillo, we've agreed at left back, maybe we should leave it. Yatesy not really getting into the game. Lorenzo Luca now. Oh, gosh. You know my thoughts on Lorenzo Luca, everybody.
Yeah.
My gosh. I'm going to keep my powder dry. Richard Spray, over to you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to your point about how the way that people are reacting in the crowd, I mean, even on social media and other environments, how that translates to what the players are feeling, and how it does degrade their confidence a bit, right? When they feel like they're trying to press too much to try to do something with it. And you clearly saw that in that last moment. That really was the last, lasting image in our minds of what we saw from him yesterday. Yeah, there's a couple of things. The cross from Hutch, where he was just like, I mean, a good 10 seconds, 5 seconds too late on getting there. because had he been there at that front post, I think that gives him a significant opportunity to score there. And we've oft, said we've both talked about Jesus' movement in the box as being an issue for him, and his ability to position himself in such a way where he gets more opportunity to score and gets easier opportunities, higher XG opportunities. And so I think Luka, you could, to a degree, I just don't think his game is predicated on a lot of athleticism, a lot of like fluid movement. His ability to hold the ball as well is not great. He got the ball taken away from him. I think it was talked about on another pod last night too, where the fact that they were deploying one of their central defensive midfielders into a center back position, and he was getting bullied at a guy who's that size and who played in a physical league in Serie A, that he doesn't understand how to manage that. I think that's a bit strange. I mean, there's nothing to date in a small sample size that we've gotten that tells me he is an upgrade over Igor Jesus. And so at this stage, I would say he's not even an upgrade over Taiwo Wani. So I would say if there's a way to utilize Taiwo in that second striker position, we can't do it with Europa right now because he's not in the squad clearly. But that his kind of physicality and movement would have been excellent for that match last night. I think he would have done a lot more with his opportunity than Luka showed. Because as you point out, I think that's just a general theme for the entire team with all these fringe players and everyone that's getting slated as far as being part of that recruitment pool, is that when the moment comes where you can really show your quality and get yourself into the conversation of being of value for the team going forward in this Europa experience in conjunction with the Premier League experience, and even coming off the bench, they're not taking advantage of it. And that's the disappointing component of this, is that even with those players that we know are starters not playing up to their level last night, the rest of those players didn't do that either. Other than maybe Cunha, I think, showed a little bit more, but outside of that, it was pretty poor. But yeah, he was at the top of that list. I mean, getting the ball taken off of him by a smaller player, and then that player advancing, and then him getting a yellow card, it just kind of bookended just a terrible, terrible performance, unfortunately. And where we are right now, our mindsets are very punitive. We're very much like, we have no time for this. We have no patience for this. And so I think in general, he's being completely written off by the fan base to a large degree. I mean, is that fair? Probably not, but it feels like that's where it's at.
Well, he's got to show something because he's in the squad. And at the moment, I mean, we had that goal against Leeds that gave us the hope that we were going to crack the crossing into the box aspect. It's just so worrying. We're pinning our hopes on Chris Wood coming back, and apparently mid-April might be him coming back into the squad to play. I think that's 5 or 6 games left in the Premier League. Yeah. So, we've got to hope that Wood comes back and Wood can hit the ground running, really. I guess, look, we've got about a few more minutes left on this before we move on to the Brighton preview in the second half. So we've got a lot to get through. So we'll try and kind of keep this succinct, Rich. But I thought that taking those 4 players off last night was the right thing to do. I thought it was proactive management from the manager to make a difference, to make us better in the second half. Of course, you don't factor in that you're going to give away a penalty within a minute. That was not on the bingo card. As soon as Sangare came on, I thought, yeah, that's much better. We're going to get our foot on the ball. I thought he actually had a couple of moments when he first came on, and he, a bit rusty, but he got into it. But yeah, look, going 2-0 down. How worried were you at 2-0 that actually this was going to unravel?
Oh, significantly, because I mean, I was at work and I was trying not to be so, fixated on it because I knew I had other priorities. But what was frustrating for me is that I still felt like even with changes, there was enough quality there because of how much they had to shift things around themselves. I mean, they didn't even have Asensio starting, right? They didn't have some of their key players there due to injury or suspension. So it's just bizarre to me that I thought that decimation of their ranks would give us at least equalize some stuff by bringing in our players that aren't our starters. And even then, Pereira still kept a good number of players that we were used to seeing. And so it just, It was worst fears actualized, as you said, about just some of the lasting memories of things that we know are just never gonna dissipate. And they're never gonna disappear in the memory bank. They're just always going to be present. It's always going to be that, oh, they're going to pull. It would be so Forest. I hate that that's the phrase. It can be used positively. It can be used negatively. It's oft used negatively. It'd be so Forest for us to collapse and give this away. And it certainly seemed like that. I didn't get a good look. I don't know about you, Greg, but I didn't get a good look at the intricacies of that penalty moment, because it looked like he may have grazed his foot to a degree, but it didn't look severe enough to me. It looked a little soft at first pass, because at first I was like, oh, they're going to go to VAR and maybe this is going to get overturned and it'll be fine. But they didn't really, at least on the US broadcast, they showed nothing really. I mean, I think they showed one replay.
I've looked back this morning because I saw it live. I was behind that goal, and as soon as he went down, I thought that's a penalty. It looked at it live.
Okay.
I didn't, only because just the way it happened. And then since I've seen it back, I thought that's not getting overturned. Had he not given it, it might be that it wouldn't have been sent to the screen to give it. So it's one of those ones, really. But I mean, I agree with you. I thought Jer Cunha actually was a positive last night, in spite of the penalty. I like what I see from him, considering he hasn't played. I thought it was a gamble leaving Morato with Jer Cunha in at centre back. That was a gamble, and taking Murillo off. You could have taken Morato off and put Murillo into the centre to shepherd Cunha for the rest of the game. I thought he did very well. He even had a shot on goal. I think he had a bit of a nosebleed. He was that high up the pitch. But, look, we got through the tie because we brought the big guns on. They came on. We did take control of the game. And then Super Callum Hudson-Odoi settles down the nerves. We had chances to get back to 2-2 with Igor Jesus.
Significant chances too. Good chances.
He should have scored. So it's not nice to lose the game. But is the bigger picture, and literally we're running out of time on this segment, Richard, is the bigger picture for all Forest fans, look, it was about getting through last night.
Yeah.
Winning's good. We want to win games of football, especially for Vitor Pereira. But the bigger picture is it's all about getting through. That's all that matters, right?
In the end, yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly none of us wants to see a loss. We had plenty of opportunity to at least get a draw, certainly to get a win, based off those big chances that came in the second half, Hutch being at the top of that list. And for momentum's sake, right, leading into just the general air of things and feeling of things going into Brighton, it definitely lifts you and helps you feel like you're going to show more. But we saw the differential there. I mean, as much as we already kind of understood that there was this delta between the quality of what we had in the starting 11 versus what we have on the bench, it just got reemphasized last night. I mean, that's the unfortunate part. It destroys a lot of confidence now that when we have to deploy those other players, and maybe it just sets it up for Pereira to know, like, going forward in this Europa experience, I just have to allow myself the opportunity to just say, I've got to risk it. I've got to put these players in. Otherwise, this is the outcome. Maybe it's 2 or 3 changes versus 6, something to that effect. But yeah, it was unfortunate that even in the end, after how horrible it was, as bad, if not worse than the Wrexham match in that first half, we still had a chance to win. And that's the disappointing part. But at the same time, to your statement, just being able to celebrate the fact that we're advancing. I mean, this is what we wanted, and I think we're favored. I think we're the third favorite to win it. So I think there's every belief that we can do it. It's just a matter of just not allowing ourselves to have that level of performance going forward.
So we play Midtjylland in the round of 16. We will be at home first, and that might suit us potentially. I think we're home. It's the 12th of March that we're home. I'm looking at it, and so look in the comments if you can clarify because the route has been worked out as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that means that we play Stuttgart or Porto if we get through. If we get through, it's Stuttgart or Porto. If anybody wants to elaborate on anything further than that in the comments, please do let me know. Ant says he thinks Ola was the man of the match. His hair was out. It was out. We like it when, his hair is out. I think that makes a big difference as well. Ola Aina cooked that up for Callum Hudson-Odoi. Owen says the ref gave them everything last night. Every time they went down, he gave them something and told our players to get up. That is true. That was frustrating for those of us that were in the stadium. Owen also says he thought Dominguez and Cunha were the only 2 half-decent performers. Taiwo should have been in the squad in Europe over Lucas, says Pat Brett as well. I think we all probably agree with that, but hindsight is a wonderful thing. And Pat thinks we got the worst quadrant of the draw. I'm not quite sure if that's true. I mean, ultimately, if you're going to win the thing, you got to beat players, beat teams, and good teams as well. We've got to let's beat the players. Mitch will end up next. The ghost of Philip Billing will be returning to the City Ground, and I won't be going to that match. I can tell you that for nothing. Before handing the nav, there's the picture on screen. There's me with Paul Morley and Raf and Danscape and the cheese trader. Stu Freestone made up a rare entrance, and it was great to get a group shot. And Steve Battermuch was in as well. There's another picture of him with Stu Freestone. It was great to see the boys. And I had to make the journey home last night. So I got in the car and I trudged back to London. I got in at 1 a.m. But we had some dirty stop outs in Nottingham last night, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Morley and Raf and Danscape. It's like watching an older version of Take That. The trio with the singing away. Great to see the boys. Great to see them all enjoying the after party. And I know Raf and Paul are on their way back now. I think Dan managed to negotiate a late checkout. So, yeah, listen, we got through the tie. That's the only thing in my mind that truly matters. When Forest won the European Cup in 79 and 80, we lost games at home in first legs. So, it has happened before. So, look, let's move on. We play Midtjylland next. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And this time, something slightly different. You might notice the hat that I've got on. Bruce ordered one the other day. So he's got his hat coming. And also Ant, he's got his hat on the way as well. The Streets Will Remember is the name of the brand. And we have partnered with them. Take a look at this.
Talking Reds have partnered with sports fashion brand The Streets Will Remember to showcase their Nottingham Forest Miracle Men range, a collection inspired by the iconic back-to-back European Cup wins from Forest's history. The range includes caps, hoodies, t-shirts and socks, designed for supporters who want Forest culture represented properly, away from generic merch and rooted in football memory. Each piece reflects the achievements, spirit and greatness of the Forest legends we honour. Creating more than fashion, The Streets Will Remember craft timeless narratives that inspire, connecting style with the essence of sporting excellence. We'll be wearing pieces from the Miracle Men collection on the channel, and you can explore the full range via the link in the bio. If Forest history matters to you, this one is definitely worth a look.
So there you go. We've got a new partner, and so there'll be more gear coming for us. Me and Richard will be sporting some lovely merchandise from The Streets Will Remember. The details are in the bio. Okay, so go to check out their website. If you're a first-time buyer, you get 10% off your first order. I'm in the process of trying to work out a discount code for Talking Reds viewers and listeners as well. So that's to come. But do go and check out The Streets Will Remember. It's a really good brand. The quality is excellent, I have to say. Really happy with this hat. I wore it last night. Lots of people commenting on it. So check out The Streets Will Remember. All right, so we talked about last night's match. All eyes now on Sunday, Richard.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll just transition real quick, but before to the Brighton match. But before we do that, let's actually have you guys like and subscribe, as you guys can see on the screen. And for those who can't, we are on all socials. So check us out on X, and please go to the audio only people. We're on all the audio only platforms. So please give us a 5-star review if you would, because we love the feedback as always. So yeah. All right. Let's switch gears, Greg, to Brighton. So, given where we're at, obviously in the league right now, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of emphasis on the league. We're in a situation now where every point matters. But from your perspective, Greg, just looking at this match now, do you classify this as a must not lose, must win scenario? Have to have the 3 points? What are your thoughts on that, and just in terms of how you're approaching this match in general?
Well, it's definitely must not lose. I mean, that is a given. but it's got to be more than that for me. Games are running out. And so when you start looking at the fixtures list, you try and identify, as fans, where we think we're going to pick up 3 points, because we need 4 wins. 3 wins and a handful of draws does it as well. But let's suggest it's 4 wins. And so Brighton is the next match up on Sunday. And it's been very up and down against them. Obviously, we had the 7-0 win at home last season. When we went away and played them in the cup, it was a very tight 0-0. When we played them at their place in the league, I was there for that. And that was 2-2 right early on in the season as well. So draws are a thing. They've beaten us this season. They've had in different form. And I just think this should be a game that we've got to target. So on the basis of the play we saw in the first leg away against Fenerbahçe, and of course the same team played against Liverpool on Sunday, and we were so happy with those performances. And my gut feeling is that will be the team that plays on Sunday as well. So if that team plays, we're not going to have any of the rotation problems, of rustiness, of players that are under the level of those so-called first teamers. And so if you're putting your best team out, you're giving yourself your best chance. And as much as, Vitor Pereira doesn't want the players to take unnecessary risks, and of course neither do I think when it comes to this game, you've got to try and make sure you're going all out to win it. He's already talked about mentality and identity. And if we have that mentality and that identity that he has referenced and he has talked about, then I think that we're in a really strong position to get all 3 points from this game. And what a big difference that could make in terms of the confidence. West Ham have got to go to Anfield. I don't think that they'll win there, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they do, or at least pick up a point. So, again, we're in that hoping area of West Ham losing to Liverpool. Spurs play Fulham away. Again, that's a tough game for them. I think we focus on what we do. Brighton are a team that we should never underestimate, but I think still that we've got enough there to win. So go there, be brave, must not lose, definitely. But I think I'm going to say it. I think it's must win.
Yeah. Well, and they've struggled. I mean, they had a really good start. They've kind of tapered off a little bit. I think the last 6 matches they've lost 4. And so, our history with them, 6 matches, drawn 1, won 1, and lost 4. So they are a bit of a bogey team for us. Not quite the level of Bournemouth, clearly. But yeah, no, I'm in the same headspace as you. I think, to your point, it needs to be that continuation of that mentality. Because if you take the same performance level you saw against Liverpool in that first half, and even if it's 80-90% of that, you're going to get good results. So you're right. It has to be perpetuated. It can't be what we saw last night. Like I say, I tend to believe last night was an aberration just because of all the different shifting things around, playing players out of position, everything we just talked about. But, so Pereira said rotation was partly about preserving energy for Brighton. So, which we kind of talked about. I mean, that was kind of behind why we chose the starting 11 we did when we were looking at that in the preview. So who for you, and what has to come back into the starting 11 on Sunday that will allow us to kind of showcase a little bit, and it'll kind of put last night to bed?
It's the who and the what. The who is your Hudson-Odois, your Sangares, your Iners starting, your Igor Jesus, your Gibbs White. It's the same team for me that played against Liverpool, and we'll do teams in a minute as well. There's not probably an awful lot to kind of discuss on teams, because I think we all agree there's got to be that team, but we'll have a look at it. So that's the who. The what has to be self-confidence, zip, energy, intensity, and instinct as well. Be instinctive. I want Igor Jesus to learn from that moment against Liverpool where the ball was slid through to him, and he really should have taken it with his right foot into his stride rather than what he did do, which was to wait for the ball to come to him. He waited. We know Van Dijk cleared it. I want him to learn from that and be instinctive. He had his moment last night to score, and it would have been wonderful for him to do that. Because again, strikers scoring goals means they score more goals, I think. You're in that groove. So I don't want him to dwell on that last night. Be instinctive. Hutch again. I think, he came into the side We liked what we saw, and he made a difference. Then he went off the ball a bit and came out of the team. And lately he's come back in, and we view him now as our starting right winger. And I think that's warranted. And I want him to be confident. I want him to think about positioning of our main striker, because, you know, if it's hurried, if the cross goes over and no one's there, it's frustrating. So our build-up play for me has to be really, really thoughtful, at the same time incisive. Callum Hudson-Odoi's end product hasn't been great lately. I know he scored last night. Too many times the ball goes down the left, he stops, cuts inside, plays it back to Anderson and Nico, and they trying to do something and it ends up coming to nothing. So I want quick, direct play at the right time. So the who has to be the personnel. The what is that level of confidence. And I'm going to say it again. It's mentality and a freedom, which is a word that we've used quite a bit, to play with the kind of identity that Pereira was forcing on them now. You know, I'm giving Pereira a lot of credit for coming into a very difficult scenario. We know about the manager changes, and it's not easy for the new guy to be the fourth guy off the rank. You know, this team have been battered and bruised and pillared and criticised left, right, and centre. And he's now coming in and trying to pick them up. And we saw signs of that, more than signs of that, at Fenerbahçe and at home to Liverpool. And he's got to do the same again now and say to them, listen, guys, the rotation happened. This squad, this club are into the last 16 of Europe. Let's park that for the moment. The Premier League is here. Let's get that intensity back. Let's get that enthusiasm and that confidence back.
Absolutely. Well, let's look at, I mean, to your point, let's look at how we're going to set up. Let's bring those teams up so we can kind of take a look at what we're thinking. And I'll probably have you, Greg, kind of walk us through this first one. I think it's probably intuitive, but for those who aren't able to see it on the screen. Yeah.
We've got Ortega in goal. And that, of course, we know, I think it was his calf last night, but Pereira says nothing to worry about. We hope he's fine. He made a good save in the first half last night to keep it a 1-0. And I like what I see from him. The more he plays, the more I like to see. The back four, we think, picks itself. Williams, Murillo, Milenkovic, Aina, as does the midfield two of Anderson and Sangare, as does potentially the front four. Hudson-Odoi left, Hutchinson right, Gibbs White in the 10, Igor Jesus up front. None of the fit players that are available to play, in my eyes, have staked a claim that says, pick me, you should be playing me. The only player that is all, you know, if you could play 12, you'd play Dominguez, because he's the one that's just missing out. He can come into the midfield, he can fill a role on the flank, you know. And so Dominguez is as good a player as any of those on screen in my eyes in terms of level. He's very good. I like Dominguez. But in terms of this system, he just misses out to Anderson and Sangare. You know, I guess you might argue, well, look, does Pereira now change the system? Is it 4-2-3, one away from home, or do we go to the 4-3-3? And that means Dominguez maybe comes in and something else happens. But for me, in terms of this formation, that's what I would go with. He rested from the start last night. Jesus, Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White, Sangare, and Ola Aina. They were all, and Milenkovic, in fact, the six of them were all rested. We had minutes, 45 of them for the players that came on that everybody knows. And I think there's enough energy there and enough spark for this team to run again.
Yeah, and then when you bring up great points. I would also say that one of the values of Dominguez is just his propensity and his ability to press. I mean, he creates challenges for opposing teams. So that's that. And we know Pereira likes to do that, or he's not opposed to doing that. But yeah, I agree with you on the formational change. It's like you're just in that place in the season where it's like, how much time has he really had to emphasize a back three model, for example, or 4-3-3? Does he really feel like the personnel we have is sufficient to be able to kind of adapt to those, you know, who the opposition is? Because we know that's part of what he does. I mean, that was what was being talked about with him, was that he did try to shift things, right, and get more tactical and do a little bit different, you know, give a different look to an opposing team. But let's kind of switch to the next one. So it is difficult when you kind of feel like it's pretty obvious what this is going to look like. Now, this is Richard probably thinking, I will own the fact that this lineup exists, you know, both in terms of setting up the graphic, but actually choosing this the personnel that's on the screen right now. So for those who can't see it, you've got that nailed on back line. You've got Williams, Murillo, Milenkovic, Aina, your typical midfield, as you referenced, Greg, who's obviously the best midfield pairing we have, and that's Anderson and Sangare. But Couple of things that are a little bit concerning for me. One, I mean, yes, Anderson played the full match, but I believe Hutchinson did as well, didn't he? He at least played the majority of it. So
Yeah, he did.
what I'm wondering is, can you, with the kind of personnel that you have, could you allow a McAtee to enter into this Premier League matchup? Could you allow him to focus him in on that centralized position that we know is more likely his natural state, and then deploy Gibbs White out on in a wide area, because we've seen other managers do this, and we've seen him be successful with this. And then what that allows you to do is probably still have, I mean, you still do have the bulk of your starters on the pitch right now, including Jesus at top, Hudson-Odoi out on the left. But then you can allow Hutch to come in off the bench. He's been sufficiently rested, and you have that little extra bit of energy, spark, adeptness on the ball, all of that to challenge. And, when maybe that gives you a little bit of an edge if you keep the match close in that second half, or at least around the 60th to 70th minute, it gives you that little bit of edge at the end where maybe their players are starting to fatigue a little bit. Because I do think there's legitimacy to what Pereira said, which is what drove him to want to switch players out. But I wonder, Greg, from your perspective, do you see any merit into that, or is this completely unorthodox and we just need to throw it out?
No, there's definite merit there, because I've said I think Pereira could unlock something from McAtee. I don't know if it's for this game, or maybe it's him coming off the bench to do that. In terms of starting, look, it would be, I think it would be brave to put McAtee in the 10 and Gibbs White on the right. I don't see it happening, but I don't think it's ludicrous, because McAtee in that role in the middle there, linking up with Anderson and Gibbs White, who he's known from playing for England. Hutchinson you can throw in as well. I mean, even if he decided to play Hutchinson instead of Hudson-Odoi, I mean, and have an all-England kind of look to the front set of players, maybe that could work. Look, McAtee is a good player. He's obviously a good player. We saw it against Ferencvaros, but we also saw it when he played for Man City. We can't go week in, week out and saying, look, it's just all on the 11 players. Or can we? I don't know. Maybe we are saying that.
May not have an option at this stage. Yeah.
You look at N'Doye, you look at Backward, not getting a sniff in. I mean, they're that far down, didn't even get on the pitch last night. Yates, will come back again. He always does. He didn't have a great night last night. Yeah, and says he showed incredible toughness. We expect that from Ryan Yates.
Yeah.
Lot of love for Ryan Yates. He's the kind of disturber, spoiler that I'd be bringing off the bench, though. He's not a starter for me at the moment. So, look, that's what I think about playing McAtee from the off. If he's going to be played from the off, though, he's got to be played in the 10. So I think you're right about that.
Yeah. Well, do you and just the approach? Okay, so here's a quick question: what do you think his approach is going to be? Because I think what was interesting, and use the Liverpool match as like sort of one side of this coin. So, do you think he's going to do a press and transition game where he just really tries to exploit and attack space, or do you think he's going to do a control and suffocate where he's going to try to dominate? He's going to try to basically, essentially, just not allow them any rhythm. I mean, how do you think Pereira is going to approach this, especially considering they're higher than us in terms of the table, but not by a huge stretch? What are your thoughts on that in just terms of his overall tactics with this particular?
If he's controlling and suffocating, I think that's him more maybe standing off and actually kind of like staying in shape, maybe being a bit more compact, mid to low block, staying compact. And I don't want him to do that. I want him to do that at the right time, obviously.
Sure.
But from the off, I want it to be more of a press and transition approach, because we were that kind of front foot against Liverpool where we just went straight for them. The pressing was evident. It was really good. Sangare thrives, I think, in that kind of game, as does Anderson when they're on the front foot. And that helps our players to unlock space as well. We saw it against Liverpool with Sangare's lovely ball over to Callum Hudson-Odoi. So for me, from the off, I want us to go after Brighton because I want us to get the first goal. I think us scoring the first goal against the Brighton team that haven't been great, as you touched on, is going to be really, really important. So you might then see the more control and suffocating coming into play, but once we've scored the first goal.
Yeah. Well, I guess what would happen, though, if from your perspective, if we did start slowly, if we did run into a situation, where maybe they take an early lead, I mean, how do you think any of that will shift? Because do you expect Pereira to be, I think you just said it, you expect him to be proactive, right? You expect him to try to do something from the off in order to get more front foot in terms of our approach. But what happens, do you think, in terms of how he approaches that if things don't go the way that you want? If things don't go to plan, what is plan B?
Well, look, the problem we've got, as everyone knows, is us scoring goals. I mean, we did it last night from open play, so it can happen. And we know that Hudson-Odoi scores goals, as do other players as well. But in the Premier League, it has been a problem. We spoke about that on the last pod. Yeah. So if we go into this game and we are a little bit more restrictive with our play and more compact, and let's say Brighton score, we go one down, that to me is danger. Big, big danger, because of our inability to score goals. I think that piles pressure on our players. And we've seen when they come under pressure, they make more mistakes. We saw it against Wolves when they kind of ran out of ideas. In the first half, I said it to Paul as well. We were sat there. We went 1-0 down, and the crowd got on their backs a bit, and they started to run out of ideas and make loose passes and bring it upon themselves even more. When you're away from home, it's a little bit different. I mean, the Amex is not allowed ground in terms of home fans. So you want the away fans to really get behind them. And I think a goal for us really kind of helps that. But if we do go a goal down, I just worry. I worry about the response, because we then think we need to score twice, because we need to win this game. So I think the best way for us to approach this game, as I've said, is to be on the front foot and attacking Brighton from the off and not letting them know what's going to hit them. We are, having said that, we do have the personnel and the players and the history of them staying compact and hitting on the break. We saw it last year on the Nuno and so on. But the Elanga and Wood combination is missing from that. And I think that it's not as effective without them. Yeah.
No, I agree with all of that. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm trying to, I'm thinking about it in terms of like, we don't want to go Dyche ball, full Dyche ball, but do we want to try to kind of feel the game out a little bit? Maybe your initial intent is to kind of sit back a little bit and see what their approach is going to be, and then you kind of pivot from there. Because I do think he has the tactical sort of awareness to be able to do things like that. But I also agree with your you can't dismiss or take out of the recent memory with Liverpool what you saw and how effective that was. Now, granted, the problem is continuing to be, where do the goals come from? So when you're looking at a player like Hudson-Odoi, for example, Greg, how disappointed have you been in him just throughout? Because I've seen some chatter in the NFFC North America group about him specifically. You touched on that he got the goal last night, but how crucial is it for a player like that to start to get in rhythm and get going? Because if it's not going to come through the middle, we need a player like that with elite skills on the ball. We know what capacity he's had in the past for that nice, beautiful curling right shot, which we've really not seen any of that this season whatsoever. So from your perspective, do you see him as too crucial to drop, or do you feel like maybe having a Hutch out there instead of him along with somebody else gives you a different look? Or do you feel like it's absolutely nailed on that he has to play, and how much emphasis do you put on his performance levels in order for us to be successful going forward?
I have been disappointed with him this season. I haven't been happy with his end product on the whole. He's been a player that's turned up in moments. Obviously, the Spurs game, he turned up with those goals. Obviously, we know what he can do when he does try and cut in, but that's been nullified. Teams know what he's trying to do now, and that isn't happening. He had a moment last night, in fact, where the shot went wide. I thought he was back on track again. A goal last night is going to help his confidence, but we need him to show up. But the question that you've asked is he undroppable? Yes, he is. He's undroppable because the guys behind him trying to get into the team just aren't good enough. The drop off to them is so noticeable. Dan and Doy has been so disappointing. Delane Backrub, so disappointing that you feel a sense of relief. Last night, I was so relieved when he made those 4 changes. I was thinking, God, he's really noticed that it's not happening, whether that's an admission that he got it wrong or whatever it was. He made the changes. That's good management. Hudson-Odoi comes on, and his link up with Nico on the left has been really good. We like that. Aina goes back over into the right-hand side, and he's linking up with Hutch, and that's starting to come to fruition a little bit as well. So they are undroppable, those two. The other thing as well, I mean, Graham says in the comments, I'd like a striker that can hit the target. Or is that too much to hope for?
At this stage, yes.
we have missed that.
Yeah.
We don't have any faith in Lorenzo Luca. I'd like to see Taiwo being given more of a chance, although there's a chance that he might even be injured, apparently. What do you think, Richard? I'm going to throw one back at you now in terms of this Hudson-Odoi playing and Hutch playing.
Yeah.
What about a false nine with McAtee playing there? Because he's played there for England. And I don't want to be the guy that's chucking out all these random, stupid suggestions. But McAtee playing in a false nine because Luca cannot position himself as a striker. And so maybe our way through these defenses is to actually take the striker out of the equation and play through them with intricacy and actually get players in and around the box taking pot shots.
Yeah, you may not be wrong there. I mean, I guess if we're talking about the Europa situation, then that certainly would beg that to be the need, as opposed to, because I've seen Morgan do the same thing when he was on the under-21s. I think when they won the was it European or I'm trying to remember which cup it was that we won where he was there, but he ended up being that focal point, that false nine. And we know he's got an explosive lower body, like in terms of his ability. He's got a lot of strength in his legs. And so for a guy who's not very tall, he's really good in the air. And so that could be a value, either one of those players. Because I think at one point too, we thought, well, could Dan and Doy potentially fill that gap if in an emergency situation? We've seen him do it. It's not good. Do I think McAtee has the propensity to do it? I would, but I would say if we're talking about someone that we are going to deploy in that role, I probably would give it to Morgan over McAtee, just because I think he has better aerial capability. And at certain intervals, you need that. I mean, even if the ball is going to be played on the ground, you're going to be doing more. And we see when Morgan scores goals, he scores it when he's closer to that 6-yard box, when he's actually box crashing.
So you have Mac in the 10 and you rotate them. You have Mac
exactly, and that can be fluid. That can be fluid. You know what I mean? Like that could be a fluid situation. I don't see that as a problem, because you get two very creative players who I think when they have been successful in terms of scoring goals, again, it's been in that box that they've done that, because we know Morgan's capacity to shoot from outside the box is not great. I think it's never evolved, basically.
Yeah.
So, but we'll switch gears real quick and we'll look at our opposition for a few minutes and then we'll kind of conclude from there. So Greg, if you don't mind bringing that up. So ultimately, when we're looking at Brighton as a whole, this is just looking at Brighton. For those who can't see, we've got the usual kind of graphics up and going. I touched on this earlier. In the last 6 matches, they've lost 4. Now, granted, one of those was an FA Cup tie against Liverpool. But they have got a couple of injuries to be cognizant of. Simas is not somebody that features very much. Webster's not somebody who features very much. They're both out. But Solly March, who we know of Solly March. He's an effective player. It's a 25% chance that he's in. He's going to have a late fitness, so it's probably going to be more of a game time decision for him, kind of like it was for Murillo against Liverpool. And then Ayari, who's a good player, is looking like he's going to be back for this match, but they have been out recently. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, they're really good actually at shooting from outside the box. They love to create long shot opportunities, creating chances through individual skills, so that players like Matoma, Minta, those kinds of players who are really good and progressive on the ball, good at ball carrying, those are the players that you're going to have to be concerned about, because obviously they're going to be deployed out wide. And then defending set pieces is really good. Well, we haven't been great at that this season anyway, so that's not really much of an advantage. It wouldn't be an advantage anyway, so it doesn't neutralize something necessarily for us per se. But a few things that they are weak at, they're not good at in the air when it comes to just general aerial dueling across the board. They will make errors that lead to shots. So that's something to be conscious of. If we can play that press and we can take the ball off them in a higher position up the pitch, maybe we can exploit that. And then stopping opponents from creating chances is not something that they're good at. They're not good at preventing open play goals and build up play. So that's something we know is effective for us because we've got the midfield to do it. In terms of the formation, they're pretty much nailed on to do more of a 4-3-3. We're not going to see one of those random things like we saw last season where they did a one-man midfielder in Hinchelwood or something to that effect. So could obviously throw that out the window. Clearly, Hertzler's learned his lesson from that one. They did operate in a 4-2-3-1 in a couple matches ago, but ultimately that's not their preferred formation. We can go to the next slide, Greg. So again, just looking at goals for, goals against, and then looking at their XG against. So for, they've got 36 goals on the season, 69% of that's coming from open play. So again, you got to control that midfield. To your point, Greg, about suffocating or you're talking about how you restrict space and you maintain compactness. That might be something that we need to do clearly in this match to try to control that midfield so you really neutralize their effectiveness there. So, and they're pretty much nailed on in terms of their XG to goals for. They're pretty much meeting that number. So you're not going to see a whole lot of like they're getting a lot of half chances or quarter chances and they're executing and being clinical in that sense. But again, the open play is the opportunity there. They do give up penalties. They have given up own goals, so it's something to be conscious of. In fact, I think, was it last season when we played them? That was where we started. It got that own goal to kind of kick things off in that big win that we had against them. So but they're not good on the counter, by the way, in terms of getting goals. But they've given up only one goal on the counter. So I think where we're going to really see effectiveness is going through that midfield and utilizing Anderson and Sangare both of their precision to unlock some things and play those balls into tight spaces. In terms of where they attack, they're primarily going to attack from that right side. That's Minta. That's their primary SCA, GCA guy. So your shot creating actions, goal creating actions. He's the leading assist man. You've got Welbeck, who's your primary striker, as we're familiar with, and then Gomez, who's really ascended, came from the MLS, young player, very talented. He's going to be primarily on the right-hand side. You might have Mintoba on the left-hand side. You might switch in Minta off the bench, or you might utilize Minta to start with, but Minta is their primary goal-creating action. And you can't forget Ruder either. Ruder is actually the second highest GCA for them, and then he's also the second highest, or the top when it comes to shot-creating action. So actually Minta's second on the shot-creating action metric. And really where they're going to operate in terms of they're really going to try to get into that 6-yard box with Welbeck to take advantage of his skill sets, with 11% of their shots coming from that area, but 53% coming from inside the 18-yard box. So they're going to try to play balls into tight spaces and really link up well. So we just really have to restrict them there. But yeah, they've got some good defenders too. Van Heck is a really good player. That's their highest rated player according to this scale. But amazingly enough, they have no players in the 7 scale according to who scored. So that's kind of looking at them in a nutshell, Greg. So we'll wrap it up there. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something?
No. I was going to say thanks very much for putting together another concise look at our opponents. I know that our viewers and listeners do appreciate us taking the time out to throw 3 or 4 minutes at our opponents. And I think if we're doing a preview of a game, it's prudent to look at their danger men and what they're doing. So you always do a good job of putting those graphics together. So well done to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, we'll kind of conclude on one quick question. I know we're running out of time here. We're almost at time, but one quick question, Greg, for the balance of Europe and survival, where do you land now on priorities? Has anything shifted for you in terms of where things are now that we're in the round of 16?
No, it's got to be about survival. I want us to win the Europa League as well. I said 17th in Europa at the start of the season, and I stand by that. We can still do it, but it's all about the personnel we've got, how we use them, and the squad that is missing a Chris Wood. That's really important. Just very quickly, Paul shared an anecdote. He was on the train coming up with some other Forest fans, and they were talking about that. And the question was, would you? The boys he was speaking to, 1 or 2 of them, said they would take getting relegated if it meant we won the Europa League. Which my mind was blown.
No.
Paul was the same. It's like, no, because they said, well, look, we think we're going to go down at some point in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years anyway, so we might as well go down with a trophy, which I thought was twisted thinking. No, for me, getting relegated has big repercussions on the plans for the stadium. The squad would be ripped apart. Yates and Abbott and 9 others would be our team next season. So, yeah, it's all about survival in the Premier League, but I do honestly think that we can beat Midtjylland, progress, and go to the final and win it.
Excellent. Yeah, you've been the man consistently saying 17th in Europa League trophy. I will take it all day long, which I'm like 17th gives me so much anxiety just because of what you have to endure. But we've already been enduring it, right? We're getting to that home stretch.
I was
so
on
why
that
not?
Mountain on my own. Now I've got
you were on that mountain on your own very early. Well done, man. You scaled that mountain and you've been sitting there patiently waiting for the rest of us to join you. So I appreciate that. Well, Greg, final thoughts before we conclude from you.
No, just to say thank you ever so much to everyone who has supported us on the channel. I don't often get a chance to kind of say it too much, but it's great to have so many of you in the comments and listening. as well. Dropping messages to us and meeting in person is always good. Rich is going to be coming over again at some point, and we'll be able to kind of build together. So, it's about community for us as much as anything else. So, yeah, come on, you Reds. Keep believing we can get a win on Sunday.
For sure. And one quick plug from me. Speaking of community, the man, the myth, the legend that started it all for me is my grandfather, Ronald King. So Ronald King, he passed away. He would have been 101 had he still been alive. But bless him. He's an amazing guy. Love him with all my heart. Miss him every day, but he's the guy who got me into this. We've often talked about just the way we become Forest fans, and it's a familiar thing for sure for Greg and I and for many others. And even those who aren't, we love you and appreciate you as well, just as much. And we definitely appreciate all those who have joined us. As we say, please like and subscribe. But we're going to conclude here, Greg. Really appreciate everything you shared and everyone again in the comments and all those who subscribe to the channel and support us. And we're really excited about the future. Even with things being a little bit dire right now, we still have that belief, right? No one can write us off, as Brian Clough talks about. All right, come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking